fresh out of prison, released early on parole, which meant I had a curfew of 10 p.m. every single night, and unless I was at work I couldn't be out that late. The PO would come to my house and was allowed to show up whenever and had the ability to search my house or anyone I was with at any time. I also got drug tested and alcohol tested randomly, and the DMV had suspended my license for 5 years, so I had no ability to drive either. Needless to say, I didn't get out much, and any girl I talked to in their early 20s, which is how old I was at the time, was near impossible, and I didn't try much. Then about 7 months after I got out, I went to the local St. Patrick's Day parade in my city, which is a huge event, and met some friends I haven't seen in years, and afterwards everyone goes barapping. I tagged along and I ordered Red Bull and a glass of ice at the bar and fit right in. Hit it off with this girl and we were dancing on the dance floor. Her friend finally wanted to leave around 7 p.m. from the bar and go back to their place about 40 minutes north of the city, and said I was welcome. When I told her no, she lost it and started begging me to have sex with her. I explained my situation and explained how far I was from home: subway 35-45 minutes, bus ride 30-40 minutes, walk home 30-40 minutes. Passed up chance to have sex when it had been a while since I had it, but didn't want to risk going back to jail for not being home if my PO happened to show up at 10:04 p.m. to see if I was home. Thanks for the gold. And yeah, I was staying with family, so that wasn't an option to bring her back to my place. Had a girl do this to me when I returned her purse. She had left it in one of the huge mail bags. We both worked in the college mail room. Instead of a thank you, I got a glare and, "Why are you touching my purse?" as she snatched it up. Holy shit. I found a phone on my morning run in the city the other day. I picked it up, looked around and saw no one nearby and put it in my pocket and continued my run. About 10 minutes later it buzzed with the lost phone. "Call this number now" message. So I called the number and spoke with the phone's owner. The guy was only 5 minutes away, so I arranged to meet him nearby. When he arrived, he was all angry and accused me of pocketing the phone straight away without looking for the owner. The path I was running on is pretty much the busiest in the city, and I wasn't about to stop every single person and ask them. He snatched the phone and said, "Lucky it was locked, but I'll still check to see if you've used it." Superhot girl came to my birthday party. We were making out most of the night. She tries to lead me to the bedroom for sexy time. She was so blasted she could barely walk. I decided I wasn't doing anything with a girl this drunk, no matter how smoking hot she was. I picked her up, took her to the bedroom and put her in the bed, told her I would be back in a minute, I needed to do something. Came back 5 minutes later to check on her and she was out cold. She thanked me in the morning for not taking advantage of her. I used to be a slot machine attendant in a casino. I was the person who would hand pay jackpots that were above $250. One time a guy won $150,000 and offered me $1,500 as a tip. Unfortunately, the casino that I worked at was owned by the government, and I was not allowed to take tips. It was so difficult to decline. $1,500 was more than I made in an entire week. At one of my first jobs, I was 15 or 16 at the time, I got a paycheck that the bank fudged a decimal on. It was a ton more than I should have been paid, and I totally could have cashed it and it would have been the bank's fault, not even my work. But I gave it back to my boss and waited to get another one. On the plus side, I received a substantial raise a couple months later, with one of the reasons cited being my honesty. Slightly different, but I got offered a job which would have doubled my wages, given me industry-wide recognition, taken me to a lovely part of the country, and potentially helped with a lot of mental health issues I had at the time. I had a bad feeling that maybe just making the move away from my friends and family wouldn't be the best thing when I was fragile like that. But God, it was tempting. That was 4 years ago, and I have now been with my girlfriend almost 3 years. The company has since folded and I'm 6 months without medication, so I would say that I made the right choice in the end. Edit. Thanks for all the replies. For the record, due to the nature of the job, I wouldn't have been in a position to save the company. It was a sports team and I would have been in a non-sporting capacity, but thanks for the kind messages. Was head over heels in love with a girl for 2 years in high school junior-senior years. She had a boyfriend who was a bit douchey, and finally senior year she left him. Her best friend, a guy, grew up across the street from her. The two of them were extremely close. We were hanging out having a fantastic time, and she asked me if she should consider him. I could have said that it'd be silly and it would ruin their friendship. I could have swooped right in since there were strong feelings. I told her she should. They were just too perfect together. They're married with 2 children. Possibly the most unselfish thing I've ever done. Was out for my nightly walk and was walking right through the Boston Public Gardens in front of the Four Seasons Hotel. Well, I found a wallet with well over $1,000 and multiple credit cards. Being a broke college student, for a brief moment this was a gold mine. In the end I decided to bring it into the hotel and leave it at the front desk. Oh, fun times. Letting my son move back in. It was a continuous cycle of him getting arrested, drinking and selling drugs. He knew how to make me feel sorry for him. He had nowhere to stay. He was hungry. He just wanted to take a shower and so on. I finally realized that I was the one that allowed this to continue. So I had to start saying no to him. It broke my heart, but I had to do it so he could learn to take care of his own problems and to be held accountable. He hit rock bottom and did some time locked up. It was hard for him to get a job after he got out, and he did try to play his mind games with me again. But I stood firm. It was hard on both of us, but it was the best thing that I could do for him. His PO got him in a program with Mission Street Lewis and turned his life around. That was 2 years ago. He is doing great now. He is working 2 jobs, taking care of his sons and staying out of trouble. I'm so proud of him, and what's even better, he is proud of himself. Good for you. I wish I had said no to my adult son, but I didn't. I allowed him to live with me for most of his life, and he used me until I had nothing left to give. He turned 43 last month. Early last year my son came into a large sum of money, very large. He refused to help me with the bills that he helped run up. He bought a couple of houses but still refused to move out. My son hasn't always treated me with any respect, and when he got that money he began being very abusive, mentally, emotionally and verbally abusive. He changed drastically. My son and I got into a confrontation and he challenged me to a fist fight. I am 62 years old and am his mother. He pulled a gun out of his pocket but didn't brandish it in my face. However, he made damn sure I saw it. I just sat here very calmly looking at my son, and I told him he had completely lost his mind. He even told me on the phone that he should have killed me long ago to put me out of my misery. I knew I could have him evicted, but that would take too long and it would be too expensive. I was advised by a police officer to get a restraining order against my son, and that's what I did. I haven't had any contact with my son in a year. Take some advice, young parents. Don't let your kids walk all over you no matter how much they try to manipulate you. Use tough love. Once they become adults, things get worse. Had my boss's wife approach me at the annual office Christmas party and asked me if I wanted to have a threesome with them. When I turned her down, she offered me $1,000. Still said no, so she upped it to $5,000. I politely declined, but I was dying on the inside. He was hot. His wife was hotter. I thought he'd be awkward as fuck afterward, but it was never mentioned between us, and we carried on as usual. Wound up working for him for 5 more years, and when I left they threw me a huge baby shower and purchased all of the baby furniture I had registered for. Still keep in touch today, 15 years later. Last night I took my 9-year-old son to see his mother at a local pizza joint. She asked me in November to keep all 3 of our boys through Christmas because of her drug addiction. Although she has custody, she showed up ready to fight and I called the cops. When it was all said and done and the kids were loaded up in my car, she hands our birthday boy his present, a kitten. Not only do we not have the finances or desire to keep an animal at the house, my girlfriend's son is deathly allergic to cats. I had no choice but to tell my crying child we cannot take it home under any circumstances, and therefore dealt with the fallout for the remainder of the night. No one ever told us being an adult could suck this bad. An ex-girlfriend showed up at a show I played at Sunday. I am in the process of splitting up with my wife, and she knows it, and was all over me. I told her she needed to go home, and her reply was my home or yours. When the chance of sex is 100%, it's difficult to say no. But she liked me way more than I liked her, and I'm not ready for anything like that yet. And I know it would just end with her being hurt, which I can't do. So I went home alone. I've been told this numerous times, and I know that many kids grow up to be terrible adults despite their parents' efforts. However, there are too many mothers like myself who give in to their kid. I raised my son by myself, so I tried to be too many things for him. I tried to be his mother, his father, and his friend. Big mistake. I always felt guilty that I wasn't able to give my son everything he wanted and wasn't able to be with him 24 hours a day. This is silly, I know. My son has always been very manipulative and was always able to turn things around to make it look like it was my fault even when it clearly wasn't. He's very smart, and to be quite honest, he has every sign and symptom of a psychopath. His father was the same way, even though his father didn't raise him. It's in the DNA, I suppose. I had dropped a $20 bill in a liquor store once. I didn't know it was mine, so I pointed it out and was like, "Someone dropped this." Guy behind the counter rushes out, grabs it, and says, "Mine now." I got home and it finally dawned on me to count my wallet. It was, of course, $20 short. I followed up the same day and asked them to check their cameras. The store owner of course pretended not to speak English, and the guy who took the money denied the situation ever took place. That liquor store was right next to my apartment. Although it was my own mistake, they lost a lot more than $20 of my future business due to their dishonesty. Situation happened to my dad. The teller had him an extra $300. He stepped away from the counter to count his cash and noticed the mistake, then went back to tell her, and she stopped him thinking he was complaining about being shorted. She was kind of nasty about it and told him that bank policy was that you needed to check before leaving the counter or it's too late. He said thanks and walked out the door, ignoring her calling after him. She knew she screwed up when he thanked her and didn't argue. This was back in the early 80s, and I'm sure that policy changed quickly. People keep forgetting what parole is. It's not you serve time and are released early. You're still serving that sentence, albeit with better privileges. Can't abide by the rules for those privileges, you'll have them taken away. Once your sentence is up, the parole conditions disappear. I found a girl's calculator in class last week with her name and number on it. Texted and told her where I would leave it, and she told me she wanted to meet instead. Been texting her ever since. Still haven't given her the calculator back though.